Bienvenue to Welcome to Reporters Plus here in France 24. I'm Mark Owen. Thousands of ordinary people were killed or just disappeared, falsely labelled as guerrillas or criminals. This dates back to the early 2000s. Colombia was going through one of the most bloody periods of the civil conflict with the FARC guerrillas. Today, a group of bereaved mothers is fighting to find out the truth. Above all, who gave the order for such killing to take place? The families who lost loved ones are pointing the finger of blame at the president at the time, Álvaro Uribe. Our reporters Pascale Mariani and Juan Orozco followed one mother over a period of 2 years. The story of Doris Tejada and her grief is deeply moving, tragic, made all the deeper by the search for the truth.
I contacted the sergeant and said,
Y yo le decía, quiero chivos.
I need sheep.
Quiero 2 chivos porque quiero hacerle un
2
asado
sheep to make a barbecue for my platoon.
a mi gente, a mi pelotón. Esas eran las palabras claves.
It was the code.
Esos
The
2
2
chivos
sheep
eran
were the
los
civilians
que
we were
íbamos
going
a
to
asesinar.
kill.
Between 2002 and 2008, thousands of Colombians were murdered by the army and then presented as guerrillas killed in combat. In military jargon, they're known as false positives.
We pasted this poster to represent the 6,402 false positives, the wrongly named false positives, extrajudicial executions.
My son and nephew went out one afternoon to take a walk and eat an ice cream. They never came back.
They were disguised as guerrillas and riddled with bullets in a neighborhood in the south of Bogota.
Doris Tejada is one of the mothers of the victims who demand justice. Most of these crimes have gone unpunished. On a poster, the faces of a dozen generals. In the 2000s, their units committed the highest number of false positives to boost the numbers of guerrillas killed.
There are 13 of them now. They have increased again. 13 dirty generals.
What the victims are asking for is that they tell the truth to the country. Who are the people responsible for this massacre? The generals, the ministers of defense? Álvaro Uribe, the president at the time?
A few hours later, in the middle of the night, these faces will be removed.
It must be the ones from the military school who did this. They are right next door. They came at night between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m.
Unacknowledged by the military, the false positive scandal is still a taboo topic in Colombia. At the beginning of 2000, Colombia is in the midst of its bloodiest period. The FARC guerrilla group controls part of the country. Their enemies, the paramilitaries, spread terror, often with the help of the army. In 2002, Álvaro Uribe is elected president. He pledges to destroy the guerrillas and launches his security policy. The following years see a massive military offensive. The results are seen in the number of guerrillas killed. In 2008, the scandal breaks.
En Noticias 1 esta noche, atención.
En las últimas horas fueron capturados en el Tolima 11 soldados profesionales acusados de matar 5 civiles para presentarlos como bajas en combate.
Las madres aseguran que sus hijos aparecieron muertos en Ocaña horas después de desaparecer en Bogotá.
Lo único que me dijo era que se iba a encontrar con una persona para ir a hablarlo de un trabajo.
The crimes are being blamed on a few black sheep.
The prestige of the Colombian armed forces in the hearts of the people and in the eyes of the international community cannot be tarnished by the crimes committed as a result of the administrative failings of some of its members.
The first victims to be discovered were from Soacha, a poor suburb in southern Bogota.
This is Oscar's face. I embroidered these yellow, blue, and red stripes, the colors of Colombia, our Colombia, that has committed so many massacres. Oscar lived with us. He was 26.
At the end of 2007, Oscar was unemployed. He left home to sell clothes in the shopping city of Cúcuta, bordering Venezuela.
He disappeared on December 31st, 2007. It was 11 p.m. when he called us for the last time. After that, he disappeared. We never heard from him again.
His family reported him missing. His remains were found in 2011.
I arrived at the police station, and a woman said to me, "Madam, we found him. Your son is in a mass grave. He died in a confrontation with the army." That was the worst thing anyone could have told me. I said, "What do you mean, a confrontation? He was not in an armed group, nothing like that."
Since then, his family has been fighting to recover his body. The military allegedly threw his body into a mass grave, which has not yet been located, some 500 kilometers from where he disappeared.
It destroys a family. They were all young people who were helping their families, innocent people. They didn't have the courage to face the guerrillas, to face people who responded to them with weapons. They're cowards.
My son was an incredible person, very honest boy. We taught him very good values. Look at him.
Gradually, Colombia discovers that the sinister practice was taking place nationwide. The false positives are first counted in the hundreds, then in the thousands. In the Colombian justice system, the trials drag on or are dismissed. Only a tiny fraction of the culprits are imprisoned, ordinary soldiers or low-ranking officers. 10 years later, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, known as the JEP, takes up the case. This restorative justice court operates in this modern building in the north of Bogota. Born of the peace agreement with the FARC guerrillas, it's responsible for judging the crimes of all perpetrators involved in the conflict.
It's a new vision of justice. The mission of the JEP is to stabilize peace in Colombia. And among the worst crimes committed in the context of the internal armed conflict are extrajudicial executions. Early and thorough investigations by the JEP tell us that this was a systematic policy. It was not simply the work of a few black sheep. It was an organized effort by powerful structures embedded in the military.
The Special Jurisdiction for Peace takes the records of the regular justice system and conducts its own investigations, thanks to the testimonies of both victims and defendants. In this system of restorative justice, those who tell the truth won't serve prison time, but offer community service and reparations to victims. At the beginning of 2021, the Special Justice System gives its first results for Case 003, the execution of civilians by state agents. It announced an unprecedented number of victims, 3 times more than the previous count. Among them, Doris's son.
My name is Maria Doris Tejada, the mother of Oscar Alexander Morales Tejada. I'm one of the moms of Mafapo, the mothers of false positives. My son right now is still in a mass grave. I've been fighting for 13 years to find him. And I will succeed. I'll make it. Thank you.
We have come to demonstrate here in front of the offices of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace to support their work and encourage them after the announcement of the census of 6,402 cases.
This is the montage they made against my brother. He asked the others who was going to shoot. Nobody wanted to, so he killed him. They put weapons on him, then boots. They put 2 left boots on him, look. Then more weapons. And dressed him up as a guerrilla. In the JEP hearings, they talk about the responsibility of the officers. But when the commanders come to testify, they say that they knew nothing about the false positives. They put all the blame on the lower ranks.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, Jurisdiction for Peace hearings are being held virtually.
Chicos, estamos en directo ya. Silencio. Chicas.
In a video conference, the victims' relatives read their testimony in front of the judges.
Mi nombre es Jacqueline Castillo, soy la representante legal del colectivo de Mafapo, hermana de Jaime Castillo Peña, muerto el 12 de agosto del 2008 en Ocaña Norte de Santander como guerrillero dado de baja en combate junto con los jóvenes de Soacha.
Buenas tardes. Esto ha sido duro para mí. Estos 13 años yo no he podido todavía aceptar la muerte de mi hijo.
La primera responsabilidad que tiene el presidente de la República, el señor Álvaro Uribe, el ministro de Defensa de la época. A mí me tocó, por ejemplo, en Soacha, iba a coger colectivo para irme para mi trabajo, donde había un grupo de varias personas diciendo, no, pero es que los muchachos de Soacha que mataron allá en Ocaña eran unos guerrilleros, porque el señor presidente dijo, pero muy abusivamente se paró en un medio de comunicación a decir que los jóvenes no se habían ido precisamente a coger café, sino a delinquir alrededor de Ocaña.
La lucha es dura, la lucha es grande porque estamos peleando con un monstruo de 7 cabezas. que es Álvaro Uribe.
De nuevo, muchas gracias a ustedes por volver a confiar en nosotros. Aquí estamos tratando de hacer lo mejor posible, nuestros mejores esfuerzos para hacer justicia.
For the families, the jurisdiction for peace brings hope that all perpetrators will finally be punished after years of legal stalemate. Sebastian Bojaca belongs to a collective of lawyers for victims of state crimes. He represents Doris's family.
I have here in my hands 2 of the 12 files that the Attorney General's office has on the investigation by the regular justice system of the murder of Oscar Alexander Morales Tejada by the Colombian army. Here we only have those who committed the criminal act. Who is missing? Those who gave part of the order.
The accused are 7 soldiers and 2 non-commissioned officers. According to them, Oscar was killed with 2 other young men during a military operation against an armed group.
If we go back to the file and analyse their testimonies, we find serious contradictions between them.
The trial was never concluded, despite the evidence against the army.
According to the inspection of Oscar Alexander Morales' body, he was carrying an AK-47 rifle with a magazine. A search for traces of gunpowder was carried out on his hands to establish whether he had indeed fired the rifle, and it was found that he had not. Local military intelligence chiefs later confessed, not only to Oscar but to 33 other victims, that all these operations were fake.
Based in Valledupar, in the north of Colombia, La Popa Battalion is one of the most deadly military units.
El batallón La Popa de Valledupar era una verdadera máquina de la muerte entre los años 2002 y 2005. Así lo señalaron los exintegrantes de esa unidad militar ante la Jurisdicción Especial para la Paz.
Por lo menos 127 asesinatos y desapariciones habrían cometido miembros del batallón La Popa de Valledupar en apenas 2 años y medio de operaciones.
Unas gotas
a few drops to help me calm down. And if I lose my control and feel bad, I'll take some under my tongue.
In a hotel in Valledupar, Doris prepares to return to the scene of the murder of her son Oscar, who died in 2008 at the hands of La Popa Battalion. She's accompanied by her family, other relatives of victims, human rights defenders, and her lawyer. Oscar and the 2 other young people killed with him were transported from Cúcuta to El Copey, more than 500 kilometers away. According to the lawyer's investigation, they walked into the army's death trap by accepting a false promise of employment, probably as day laborers on a farm. In El Copey, Doris discovers that the place where her son is buried is being covered by a construction site, which will make the search more difficult.
Look, families of the disappeared are coming to meet you.
The municipality is building a cemetery here. In the 2000s, dozens of anonymous victims of the conflict were buried by the army somewhere on this vast plot. Many of them were false positives. The Jurisdiction for Peace has ordered a pause in construction while excavations are carried out.
They told us that the results were measured in litres of blood, and that simply capturing men wasn't enough. What was it they needed? Litres of blood. And the families of the victims have the right to know the truth. When we provided results, they gave furloughs. Furloughs to soldiers who were patrolling 4, 5, 7 months in the jungle without seeing their loved ones.
This man was a non-commissioned officer in La Popa Battalion. He agreed to testify in Bogota under the condition of anonymity.
I joined the army in 2005. I joined out of love for my country. My family could not afford to pay for my education.
Following a disciplinary violation, he had to provide results or risk being expelled from the army.
And that's when I started to plan with the intelligence sergeant and the commander what kind of kills we were going to do. The sergeant was in contact with someone who would bring us the misled people. He was a civilian. He died later in strange circumstances, in a battalion vehicle. Apparently the brakes failed. The scout looks for the victims, making them believe that there's a promise of work in a farm, to pick coffee, for example. This recruiter brings them to the points where the executions will be carried out. In my case, he brings them into town. I'll go get them. How do I get them? In a 4x4. Who was it assigned to? The colonel and the major. We tell them that they are not going to work picking coffee, but that they have been recruited by the United Self-Defense paramilitaries. So, they have to put on uniforms. Then we tell them we're going to do shooting practice. The two people who are going to be killed are placed at a distance, one at one point, the other at another, covered by the vegetation in the area. And in front of them were soldiers who knew what we were going to do, under the orders of the commanders. That is, to murder them. They shoot one, they shoot the other, and that's it.
The officer did not participate in the murder of Doris's son, but the staging was often the same. Oscar Morales and his two companions were shot dead on the side of a country road, far from the village. In their memory, Doris and her companions will plant trees there.
This is where they reported the alleged combat. The description was that before the bend, they confronted 10 people, according to some soldiers, 20 according to others. At the end, the 3 young men were on the ground. One would have to have died on this side, and the other 2 on the other side of the river.
Bueno, en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén. Papito Dios, dame fuerzas para seguir este caminar.
Por nuestros desaparecidos.
Ni un minuto de silencio.
Toda una vida de lucha. Por la memoria. Contra la impunidad y hasta encontrarlos.
In all cases, the victims were from among the vulnerable population. They came from poor neighborhoods, or perhaps it was a local thief, or mentally handicapped people. The target was vulnerability, the lack of employment and education opportunities. Who gave the order? If we organize this in a hierarchical order, we have to start with this policy called democratic security. We were under the government of Álvaro Uribe. And the army was led by Mario Montoya.
Gabriel Rincón was a lieutenant colonel in the 15th Army Division. He was in charge of operations and approved false reports of civilian executions committed by his unit. He's confessed to these crimes before the Jurisdiction for Peace.
I met General Montoya when he was head of the Joint Command of the Caribbean region. First time he confronted me, he said, "You too must provide me with results." In a joking tone, he said to me, "Find some dead people, put a uniform on them, and turn them in." I didn't pay attention at the time, but it surprised me. Why was he making such comments?
General Mario Montoya is the most senior officer to appear before the Jurisdiction for Peace. He denies any responsibility for the massacre of civilians. But many witnesses question his methods. Mario Montoya was one of the pillars of President Álvaro Uribe's security policy. From 2006 to 2008, he was commander of the army.
He went past each of the officers and asked them how many were killed in action, and he gave us a deadline. If in less than a month we did not start producing results, he would relieve us of our duties. Many commanders did not want to take part and preferred to leave. It is lucky for them that they left. Unfortunately, we who remained started to play a role that has been the greatest disgrace to this country.
Today, there's a kind of pact of silence in the Colombian army. Ex-military personnel who testify in court often do so at the risk of their lives. Colonel Rincón was the subject of an assassination attempt. He was given an armored car and bodyguards. In public sessions held by the Jurisdiction for Peace, more and more ex-militaries are admitting their crimes to the victims. In 4 years, more than 600 soldiers have testified. Some generals and colonels are beginning to plead guilty, exposing the full extent of the scandal. Oscar Parra is one of the 3 Jurisdiction for Peace magistrates in charge of the case.
What we've done is to use the tools that transitional justice gives us to promote a profound clarification of the truth, but also reparative dialogue scenarios. And all this has allowed us to contribute to breaking with the denial that has characterized the institutional response of the government towards this issue for many years. Little by little, we're bringing to light the evidence of the widespread nature of the incident, the systematic nature of the events, and a wide range of responsibilities that we are gradually clarifying.
The investigation will last several more years. Then, a peace tribunal will deliver the sentences. Those who fail to tell the truth face up to 20 years in prison. The Jurisdiction for Peace is not authorized to judge a former president. Álvaro Uribe and his defense minister, Juan Manuel Santos, are not currently under investigation. The mothers continue to ask, who gave the order? They push on with their struggle with a series of rituals to mourn the loss of their loved ones.
We're going to the wash house to wash our wounds, to wash away all our pain, to continue to move forward on this path, which is very long, very difficult.
In El Copey, the Missing Persons Search Unit located the mass graves and began excavations in the empty field where Doris's son was reportedly buried. About 40 bodies have been found. It could take years to identify them. The false positives affair is just one of the dark episodes in the endless Colombian conflict. In total, since 1985, 450,000 people have died, and more than 120,000 have disappeared.
Pascale Mariani and Juan Orozco with our story. We'll be watching, of course, for developments. You can see the report again on our website, france24.com. Stay with us here in France 24. Thanks again for watching.